right. My name is Hai Nguyen. I'm co-founder of Affluence, the company behind Prioritization. Today's webinar is on the crash course of Prioritization. And at the end of the day, what I hope you get from this webinar is a good exposure to Prioritization and a good understanding of what it can do. I think the number one reason why you might want to be here is if you are struggling with just the sheer number of emails, sheer number of tasks, and facing challenges around prioritization. So hopefully what you'll learn is how Matrix can actually take all of those things and help you put it all into perspective so that you can prioritize your tasks, prioritize your projects, and prioritize your emails. My goals, first, help you understand the basics of Matrix, the software itself, help you understand and apply the Eisenhower Matrix, which is a methodology around time management, and then walk you through how to actually prioritize tasks, projects, and emails in Matrix, and then also show you basic collaboration features so to prioritize team tasks, and then finally, how to use Matrix in conjunction with Microsoft Teams and Outlook. One of the things I want to mention is that Prioritization is a Microsoft 365 security certified software. We're also a certified solution for modern workplace within the Microsoft ecosystem. So if you happen to use Microsoft, Prioritization is almost a no-brainer. But at the same time, Prioritization works completely outside of that as well. So Prioritization is a comprehensive email priority and project management software, and it helps at 3 different levels. The most important, in my opinion, is the individuals, right? That's all of us here today. At the end of the day, we all have a lot of tasks. We all have a lot of things to do. And honestly, one of the challenges I face constantly is just bombardment of tasks coming from so many different places, from emails, from messaging, from customer tickets and so forth. So how do I prioritize and put that into context to make sure that I don't lose track of my most important work? And what happens is that if you prioritize well with Matrix, guess what? If every single team member is also on the same page, then you can actually share priorities with each other and help everyone stay aligned. And that's how Matrix helps at the team level. And then as you use Matrix more, we actually build out a very comprehensive understanding of what it is that you have worked on in the past. And so it actually helps organizations create what's called a single source of truth to help you become more efficient and more effective. So as you watch today's webinar and as you use Matrix, I want you first to be focused on you, on prioritizing your task. And then what happens next is sharing that with your team members. And if you do that, everything else will fall into place. Now let's start with the fundamental concept behind Matrix. So there's a famous quote attributed to former President Eisenhower: "What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." And what I really like about this timeless quote is that it helps us understand the context of things. Let me give you an example. Let's just say if you go and you were to write down the 15 things you have to do right now, right? So start jotting them down. Where do you start if you have to decide what to work on at this moment? Do you start at the top of the list or the bottom of the list or somewhere random in the middle? And the reason why it's so challenging is that the thing that you write down first, that's top of mind, right? But that doesn't mean that it's the most important thing. And so instead of actually taking those 15 things and working from a list perspective, you take every single task and you ask a simple question: is this important and is this urgent, right? And so for every task, then you get, a series of answers. Yes, it's important. Yes, it's urgent. Yes, it's important, but that's not urgent. Yes, it's urgent, but it's not important. So what happens is if we take and we categorize that, we end up with something called the Eisenhower Matrix. So the idea here is very simple. If it's important and urgent, it's high priority. That's what you should work on today. If it's important but not urgent, that's medium priority. That's what you should work on next. And then if it's urgent but not important, it's actually low priority. And that's where people get confused. Usually, people are very good at understanding what they need to work on right now because it's urgent and it's important. But where they end up mixing things is actually in the low and medium priority because people tend to work on things that are urgent rather than important. Let me give you an example. In the morning, I get a lot of emails, lots and lots of emails. And so guess what happens? You look at the email that's at the top, right? You end up responding to those emails that just came in a lot more rapidly to the emails that that came in prior to that, even when they're more important. And the reason is it's because it's top of mind. And so this is something I want you to actively think about, today, just literally for the rest of the day. Go through how you're responding to emails, how you're responding to messages to you, and see if you're making this policy, which is anything that's urgent and the last person that pinged you somehow gets higher priority than everything else. And so with the Eisenhower matrix, we make it explicit. So when I asked you about those 15 tasks, if you categorize them the way that I've suggested, which is important but not urgent is in medium priority, and then urgent but not important is in low priority, I think you have a better sense of how you should spend your time. And then lastly, instead of tracking anything that's not important and not urgent, you have what's called the uncategorized bucket. So to me, this is where everything starts, right? And so that's my inbox, that's my catch-all. So when I create tasks in Party Matrix, I always like to create them in the bottom right, and then I move them around as needed. And that really is the fundamental concept behind Party Matrix. So here's how it works. When you use Party Matrix, you would have this Eisenhower matrix for your personal tasks. These are all things you have to do. But here's the next thing. You go and you create the same Eisenhower matrix, but for the task that you share with your team members. Okay, so what that means is that if you're a manager, you're going to write down the priorities of all the things that you're working on across you and your entire team and all your direct reports, right? And if you're at the director level, perhaps you do the same thing, but now with all your managers and so on and so on. Then what you do is you walk around and you compare notes. And what I mean by that is you have your coworkers write down their priorities in their party matrix, and then you have your party matrix, and you have your manager's party matrix, and you have your direct reports party matrix, and then you look and see if there's any mismatches. And the interesting thing is that most of the time we don't have mismatches. We are actually very aligned. Most people know what it is that they need to work on. But once in a while, you find that there are priorities that shouldn't be there, or you find that there's something that you thought was high priority, which your manager doesn't think so, or then vice versa, something that you thought was low priority and your manager thought was high priority. And that's where the most interesting conversations happen. So when you use Party Matrix in a team environment, it's really around identifying those mismatches. And so the 4 quadrants Eisenhower Matrix create alignment across your team because it forces you to prioritize from the beginning, right? So imagine if everyone gave that, just provide a list of the things they're working on. The conversation just isn't as meaningful because I have no idea, what they consider to be truly important within that list. But if they put it in a matrix format, I can pinpoint exactly what are the areas we agree on and what are the areas we disagree. And by the way, the reason I emphasize this so much is because at the end of the day, this is the single most important thing about Party Matrix. This is what makes Party Matrix different and better than so many other software that's just, helping you prioritize your task. It's a way to visualize the information that you have in a way that is meaningful and helpful in deciding what to work on. And so success from using Party Matrix isn't about finding out what everyone agrees on. It's this discovering disagreements on what should be a priority when it isn't. And so if you ever find that to be the case when you have a team meeting and your Party Matrix is surfacing up disagreements, it means you're using it correctly. A couple of tips before I jump into the product and show you how to put it into practice. If you're a manager, create a Party Matrix for every team, for your team staff meetings. And so when I use the word project here, it means a Party Matrix, Eisenhower Matrix equivalent, right? And so what that means is you have a lot of matrices, and each of those matrices have their own set of priorities. So for your staff meeting, simply screen share during your meeting. That's pretty much it. If you are all in the same room, put it on the big screen. If you're using software to communicate, share the matrix on the screen and then talk through it. And so instead of actually just have everyone talk about whatever it is that's on the top of their mind, you use Party Matrix to give you that structure. And by the way, this is something that I've seen over and over again, and it's so important. What happens is that if you don't use Party Matrix and you don't project the priorities, the team priorities on the screen, what happens is that your teammates, when they bring something up, guess what? It's really the urgent things that they bring up, not the important things. And the reason is it's top of mind. And I've seen this over and over and over again, which is if you don't add this structure, they're going to talk about that, that last issue they just faced yesterday, or that last email they just got. So by simply projecting Protomatrix, you can ensure that you don't forget about the most important things. Then, if you happen to manage multiple sites or multiple locations or multiple projects or initiative, then create a different Party Matrix project for each of those sites or location or initiative. So the idea is that you shouldn't be afraid of creating a lot of matrices, because everything that deserves its own set of priorities should have its own set of matrices. If you have a specific training program or initiative, then you can actually create a Protomatrix project and then turn it into a template. So an example might be, you might have an intern onboarding process, right? So let's just say if you have a lot of interns that you bring on every single summer, and all those interns got to follow 25 different tasks that they got to do, everything from logistic stuff to onboarding and training. Well, guess what? You can actually create a Protomatrix and then organize it in such a way where you're saying these are your priorities and so forth. Save it as a template in the system, and Protomatrix will automatically create that for your new employees along with all the due dates created from their start date. If you're a business owner, create a project for each of your departments. And then if you're an individual contributor, then make sure that you create projects to manage your personal goals. And at the end of the day, ways for you to get your promotion. And so I emphasize that because your success as an individual is the most important thing. I do want to mention that our webinars are recorded, like, such as this one, and then they're posted on our website at affluence.com/webinars. And so this is where you can get free training, both from live training like this one or recorded ones if you're watching this as a recording. So I do want to mention that. So make sure that you check out the other webinars on email management, templates, or other topics. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the software and show you how to put this into practice. If you have questions during this whole process, please feel free to send them in the chat, and I'd be happy to answer those questions after my demo here. So here I have my Protomatrix open. So I happen to have my Protomatrix on the web. I do want to mention that Protomatrix also has a desktop application. So what that means is that you can actually go and install it for Windows, install for Mac. And if you do that, it's actually really helpful because then Protomatrix is present always. So then if you get notifications or reminders or whatever, it pings you. So definitely check that out if you're interested in making sure that you're on top of everything. So let me give you a sense of how Protomatrix is structured. On the left-hand side, these are my projects. So earlier, I talked about a project being a matrix, right? So what that means is that when I select a project here, then I get the 4 quadrants. And so as you can see, I have a project called My Personal Priorities. It's high priority, medium, low priority, and then inbox, right? That's, again, my catch-all. So let me give an example of a task I might have to do. I'm going to go ahead and say, follow up with webinar participants. Okay, so that's a task that I have to do because I will follow up with all of you and send you an email. And then I'm going to say due tomorrow at 2 p.m. Now, what happens is that Protomatrix actually uses what's called natural language to set the due date for me. So when I click on this item now, on the right-hand side is my item details. Then this gives me additional context around the task if I need to add them. But the most important thing here is that you can see how I say, follow up with webinar participants due tomorrow 2 p.m. It automatically sets the due date for me tomorrow at 2 p.m. using my local time. So if you're in a different time zone, it's okay. Protomatrix will automatically understand your time zone and set the due date for you. And what I like about this is that I didn't have to click on a button. I didn't have to go through an additional step of setting the due dates. Instead, I just type naturally, and then Protomatrix sets that due date for me. I could say due in 2 weeks, due in 3 hours, and so on and so on. And also, if you notice, when I type a task here in Protomatrix, I can keep going. I can actually write down 15 ideas in 30 seconds. I type pretty fast. And so for me, that's an amazing way to capture all the information that I have without clicking on buttons and all that just to set due date. Now take a look at some of the other details that we can add. There's a couple things here. I can start the task, which means to mark it as important. I can add an icon to the task just to give it some context. I can assign this task to another person, which in a team environment is actually very useful. But if you're using it just for yourself, this assigning process may or may not be important. And then next to that, you have what's called progress, efforts, and reminders. Now, progress is straightforward. If you use subtasks in Matrix, you can say, if I got 4 subtasks out of 8 done, then it's 50%, right? Or you can manually override it. Effort is where you can say, this task will take me 1 hour, 2 hours, or you can type in the command here, set effort to 15 minutes, and Matrix will track those hours for you and can actually build a report that you can use to track your billable hours and so on. Now, there's due dates and reminders, and these two are, in my opinion, two of the most valuable tools that you can use in Matrix. So as you can see, the due date is set, and then what happens is that a reminder is different from a due date for this specific reason. Let's just say you have something that's due in 2 weeks, and it will take you a day or two of work to get done. If you set the due date for 2 weeks from now, then in 2 weeks, on that day, you're not going to get that task done, right? So you want to make sure that you set a reminder ahead of time, and that's a way to ensure that this task is top of mind. I think the challenge that a lot of us face is that we have so many things going on that if you have something that's important but far out, you tend to forget it. And so by setting a recurring reminder, it ensures that that particular task stays top of mind. And so as you can see, the reminder is a way to keep the task on top of mind, which is different from the due date, which is when it's actually due. So I strongly recommend that you use both. So here, let's just say I'll go ahead and click on reminders, and I have a couple options. I can say remind me daily, remind me on weekdays, or remind everyone monthly. So as you can see, these are some preset buttons for me, but I can click on here and actually change it as needed. So go ahead and say remind me daily. And so now on a daily basis, I'll get a reminder to work on this task until it's done. So when you use Matrix, I strongly recommend that you set the due dates, because you don't know how, if something's urgent or not, unless you set a due date, right? So you mark it on your calendar. That's helpful. And then set the recurring reminders for anything that's truly important. Okay, so down here, I have the chats, and as you can see, the chat, it's writing out the history of all the changes that I have here. But then also, this is where I can communicate with my coworkers. So, I could say, could you make sure you follow up and tomorrow? Okay, so imagine this is a place for me to have a conversation with my coworkers as I assign them a task. And what's nice about this is that we can have a conversation within the context of the task. And the reason that's important is that later on, when you need to review a history of things, you can actually go to a task and see exactly what everyone talked about. So what this means is that 6 months from now, right, if you need to go back and look at the history of something and what decisions were made, who talked about what, or you need to assign this to another person, they can look at the chat history here and see that. Then in the notes section, this is where you can add basic notes. You can also create subtasks. And then if you click on this fill with AI, what Matrix will do is actually it'll create a series of subtasks for you. And so, for example, I can click on that option, and this is where our system goes and investigates and say, you know what, if you're going to follow up with the webinar participants, these are some of the things that you might have to do. And so that just simplifies the requirements that you have for a specific task. This is useful if you're trying to brainstorm different things that you have to work on, and you're trying to assign that to another person, and you want to make sure that they get each of those things done. And then as they mark this done, then the progress will update automatically. Finally, you have the resources section, which is where you can upload files, documents, emails, links. You can attach other tasks, and you can create dependencies and so forth. So that's the basics of creating a task in Matrix. So now let's just say I want to make sure that I prioritize this. I simply drag this to the top left. So now it's a high priority task for me. And then one of the things I can do is when I start my day, I can actually resize this quadrant. So then I can just look at my high priority task. And so it's as simple as that when you're using Matrix to create your personal priorities. So you can see how I just have a project, a very simple project, create all the tasks that I have to do. And then whenever I get them done, I just click on this checkbox here, and then that goes away. I can filter it later and find them as needed. But that's how I track my work on for my the things I have to do personally. So now when we talk about how you want to use Protomatrix in a team environment, it's slightly different. So if you click on a second project here, so I create another project called weekly staff meetings. And so in this particular case, as you can see, there's a couple things that's different. I can actually change the quadrant name. And so I can actually click on here and change the quadrant name as needed. And then I can actually invite team members. And so if you're managing a team of 5 or 10 people, you can simply create a project and then invite the team members. And now everyone will get access to this project. And then when you have those team meetings, you can actually just make the updates to the priority list within this project. And everyone else, when they get back to their office, their desk, they'll see exactly the same priorities as you. And so that's how you can keep everyone aligned on the same page. One of the neat thing about Protomatrix is that it can also give you different views. So as an example, the 4-quadrant view here is the most basic view that we have. But you can actually click on this list view to see all the tasks that you have, but in a list format. So what I like about the list view is that it's very easy for me to filter and sort. So for example, I can sort by when tasks are due, I can sort by when they're modified, but then I can actually do something that's really neat, which is I can build reports. So I go to here, I select all, and then I can choose share, and I can do email items. And what Protomatrix will do is it'll actually generate an email report for me. So imagine for a second how you can, if you need to report on your work to your executive or to an external client, and you don't want to share your entire Protomatrix, you can see how I can actually generate this email report, send it to my client, and it takes literally seconds to build a comprehensive report of everything that's been done, everything that's still in progress. And I'm sure you can see how when you're back in this view and you click on share, you have other options as well, including export to CSV, as well as print the items or compute billable hours. And so I'll let you explore that as you use Protomatrix more. Then I also have what's called the Kanban view. What I like about the Kanban view is that it helps you see what are the things that you have to do, what are the things that are in progress, and what are the things that are done. So an example of where this particular view is useful is if you're a project manager and you have 50 things you have to do for a project, right? And it has a start date and it has an end date. When you go to this view as a project manager, you'll see immediately everything that's left on the table, everything that we're making progress on, and everything that's been accomplished. And again, it's a very easy way to visualize that information. And then you can take a screenshot of this, or you can export this information to put into your presentation as needed. Then, of course, there's a calendar view, which takes everything that's a due date and shows in the calendar. And then the timeline view. And let me give you an example of why the timeline view is useful. The timeline view gives you perspective across much larger time horizon. So what that means is if you use a calendar, it's good to see things that are due today or this week, right? But if you go to the timeline view, it lets you see things out that spans out years. And so you can see tasks all the way up to 2027, 2028. And so if you are managing a team and you have initiatives that span multiple years, the Gantt chart timeline view is very helpful for that. All right, so now let me switch gear a little bit and talk about email management. I think that's probably the #1 reason why a customer comes to Protomatrix, because they're overwhelmed by the sheer number of emails. If you're like me, you get a lot of emails, and the reality is we all struggle with it. It's just, I get an email and then it's important, but I can't answer it right now, right? And so what I do, I flag the email or I mark it as unread or whatever. I sometimes set it as a read later. But the challenge there is that if I have 50 flagged emails, I'm going to start losing track of that too, right? Because then that becomes overwhelming. So with Protomatrix, we have an amazing integration with Microsoft Outlook. And so I'll show you how that works. So if you happen to use Microsoft Outlook, one of the things you can do is on the top right here, you can click on apps, then you can install Protomatrix, turn emails into tasks. And so if you click add apps, you can search for that. And then what happens is that I can click on this option here, and then I can choose to prioritize this email that I'm reading, or I can choose open Protomatrix. So I'll go ahead and choose prioritize email. And so what this allows me to do is I can take any email and actually prioritize the email into whatever project that I want. So for example, I get this email, I'll put into my personal priorities. It's a very important email, so I'll put in the top left here, and I'll go ahead and set a due date for tomorrow, and then I click capture. And so what's happening now is that Matrix will actually take an email, make sure that you have a due date for it, make sure that it goes into the appropriate project, appropriate context. And in fact, I could even assign this email to another person, right? And so if you've ever received an email from a client and you actually need another team member to respond to it, and then you forward it to your team member, and then, again, they may or may not see that task, and you have no way to track all of these forwarded emails that you've created, well, you just eliminate all of that by using the Matrix Outlook extension, because now it's organized into Matrix, into the appropriate project, it's properly delegated, there's a due date for it, and then it's prioritized into quadrant 1. And then what's nice about this too is your coworker can go to the resources section and open up that EML file, which is the email file, and respond to the customer or see all the details, all the attachments as needed. And so as you can see, I can actually have 50 emails, but it's all prioritized and I have all the due dates on them and I know exactly when I need to work on them. And then not only that, again, you can use the reminder system to make sure that you don't forget to work on that email. So by going back to the same view here, if I choose Open Matrix, I can actually attach emails to existing tasks too, because sometimes I get a follow-up and I don't want to go and take a follow-up email and convert it into another task. Instead, I actually want to attach multiple emails, multiple files into one single task in Matrix. So this is actually a unique capability to Matrix. There's no other apps that let you do this as far as I know. And so you can actually have all this information in one centralized place. So when earlier I talk about that single source of truth, that's what this is, right? Matrix lets me have a single place to prioritize all the work that I have and then have all the documents, all the emails relevant to the task in one central place. So when I assign that to somebody else or, to another person down the line, they get to see all the files that's relevant. And so if you've been forwarding emails back and forth, you know what the chaos is like, where, everyone start losing track. There's responses here, responses there. You have no idea what's done and what's not done. So please don't forward emails. Instead, use something like Matrix. But what happens if you don't use Outlook? Well, what's nice is that Matrix actually works by forwarding any email as well. So what happens is that I'll go back to Matrix here. If you click on inbox, you actually get this secret inbox address. So every single one of us has our own unique secret inbox address. What I like to do is I click on that, then I save that email address as a contact. So on my iPhone, I don't use Outlook, I use Apple Mail. And so when I get an email, I can't go and prioritize that easily. So what I do is I save this contact as inbox Matrix. That's the name I save it as. Then what happens is that when I get an email that's important, I just forward it to that contact, and then I can actually type due tomorrow, remind me daily. And Matrix will automatically create a task from that email and then actually set the due date and set a reminder. And this is how I can make sure that I don't forget an email even when I receive it when I'm out and about and not at the office. And so not only that, every project in Matrix has an email address too. And so what's really nice about that is you can actually build all sorts of rules. So for example, I have a rule where all emails from Microsoft goes into my Microsoft Party Matrix project. And so then I have one central place to see all those emails that's been sent to me. And that's all set up automatically via rules. So I want to bring that up because the email integration of Matrix is really neat. Now, if you happen to use a lot of web-based apps, so for example, web-based emails apps or even Outlook on web, one of the things you can do with Matrix is actually install our Chrome and Edge extension. And when you do, it goes up right here on the top right. So then when you get an email or a document or whatever, you can simply select the text, right-click, choose Matrix, and then you can actually take a screenshot or save that task to Matrix directly from the web. And it's the reason we do this is because we recognize that, tasks come to you in so many different ways, right? The last thing I want to do when I create a task is I don't want to go and open a, Matrix, find a project, create the task, take a screenshot, attach a screenshot. Just think about the number of things I have to do for that to happen. Instead, I can select the task within the context of whatever it is I'm doing and then capture that information. And then I can assign that to somebody else as needed. So try out this feature. I enjoy it a lot. I use it a lot because I do a lot of screenshots and so forth. And so by using this extension here, you can be on any web page. You can be on SharePoint. You could be on Dropbox, OneDrive, or whatever, and be able to capture a task directly from that page. So now let me go back to Outlook, and I want to show you something else. If you happen to use Outlook a lot, one of the things you can do too is on the bottom left here, you can also add Matrix. Oops, and then you can also add Matrix here on the left-hand side as a universal app. And so then you can pin it right here. So this is two different add-ins, by the way. So you have to add Matrix to Outlook to prioritize email. Then you add Matrix on the left-hand side to access the entire Matrix application inside Outlook. And so this is called a universal app. So this allows me to spend all my time in Outlook and I can access all of my Matrix without ever having to leave Outlook. So make sure that you do this if you're, spending all your time in Outlook. So once you do that, you pin it, and once you pin it, Matrix is there for you. And then one of the things you can do with Matrix too is actually you can get what's called your calendar. So Matrix allows you to actually access your calendar. So if you go to this particular website right here, you can actually get access to all your Matrix calendar, and then you can actually add your calendar to Outlook. So then you can see all your tasks inside Outlook calendar. So that's a very useful setup. Matrix also connects with Outlook tasks as well as Microsoft to-dos, planners, and so forth to pull in those tasks into Matrix. And then I'm going to switch to Microsoft Teams for a second just to show you how Matrix works inside Teams. If you happen to use Teams a lot, one of the neat things you can do is actually add Matrix onto the left-hand side here, and then you can actually access the entire Matrix without having to leave Microsoft Teams. So as you can see, if I click on my personal priorities, look at that email that I created earlier from Outlook. It's right here. If I click on the quadrant view, I can see that email. And then that email actually has a link where I can go and download the email, and then I can open this email file as needed. And you see how I assign this email to another person. And again, all this information is synchronized no matter where you are. So Matrix works inside Teams, inside Outlook, on desktop, on mobile, and so forth. And so what that allows you to do is, you have a unified way to see exactly what it is you need to work on. And then if you actually need to assign tasks to your coworkers, they will also be on the same page. The other neat thing about Matrix is how it integrates with the rest of Microsoft. So we're probably the most integrated software within the Microsoft Teams ecosystem. So for example, let's just say if I have a conversation with a coworker, I can add what's called the one-on-one view. So again, I go plus, click on this plus, choose Matrix, I can choose the one-on-one view. And when I choose the one-on-one view, I can actually click on the one-on-one view with my collaborator inside Teams and see all the tasks I have in common with my coworker. So earlier, I assigned my coworker here this email. When I go to the one-on-one view, that information is right here. So when I have a one-on-one with somebody, I can just go to this view inside Teams and see exactly all the things I have in common with them. I don't have to click through multiple projects, and then I have to, search for this information. Instead, this pulls it from all projects inside Matrix and creates one centralized place with all the information that you need. So I call this the people-centric view. It sort of flips everything around. Instead of looking at this from the project perspective, you look at it from the people perspective. And then I can add the same view with all the other coworkers that I work with. And that's a very, very useful way to make sure that, all your coworkers are on the same page. Again, if you're a manager and you have 5 or 10 people working with you, you don't want to go to Matrix and click through a bunch of projects to see what they're working on. You just simply add this one-on-one with each of your coworkers, and then you can click on that view when you're having that meeting with them and know what they're working on, what's overdue, and then reprioritize as needed. And by the way, what's really useful here is if your coworker is going on leave or is on vacation and you need someone else to take over the job, check out what I can do. I can go to multiple selection. I can select items. And so I'll select the most important items here. And then I can go and reassign the task to another person, just like that. And so with just a few clicks, I can actually take tasks spanning across multiple projects and reassign them. In fact, I can select all tasks and reassign to somebody else or change the due date in bulk. This multi-selection is absolutely amazing. I use it all the time because I love how I can actually make bulk changes. And then not only that, Party Matrix combined with these powerful filters where I can run all sorts of information. I can extract, all the information around what did, my direct report work on for the past month, right? All the things they finished. And so I don't have to go and ask them and waste their time. Instead, I just click on filters, find the information that I need, and then generate an email report that I need. And Party Matrix also lets you go and turn any team's conversation into a task. So for example, you and another person might be talking about something in Party Matrix. Simply click on this ellipsis and then create PM item directly from a conversation. And so this allows you to quickly capture information that's happening during your live conversation with somebody, right? And then also you can actually send Party Matrix tasks here. So Party Matrix also has a chat bot, and we also integrate with Microsoft Copilot. So that's one of the things that, if you happen to be very deep inside the Microsoft ecosystem, Party Matrix will help you get so much more out of Microsoft. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and go back to Party Matrix here, and let me just show you a couple of additional basics thing as we talk about how to use Party Matrix on a day-to-day basis. Now, the next most important thing for you to do is learning how to create a project. So we've seen how to create a task, we've seen how to reprioritize, and then how to capture emails. But what if you want to create different projects? Well, you simply click on projects and create project. When you do that, you have few options. First, you have to create a blank project. So if you do that, you simply choose the color and then type the project name and then click add. Very, very simple. So the idea here is, sometimes you just want a basic Party Matrix with the high priority, medium priority, low priority as the quadrant names. And then in the user group, you can actually automatically assign different user group to this project. So let me give an example. Let's say if you have a marketing team, you have an engineering team, right? And you create a project and you want to invite everyone from the marketing team. That allows you to do that really, really quickly. And then if you click on this option here, the admin can actually build their own user groups. And so what that allows you to create all sorts of user groups because you might have different people being responsible for different types of projects. Then in the future, when you have someone new join the team, you add them to that user group, they automatically get access to all those projects. Very, very powerful way to manage user access. Also, I can actually choose what's called public templates. And so we've generated probably like 1,000 templates that you can use for free. And so it's just different ways to use Party Matrix because you can change the color, you can change the naming convention, you can pre-populate tasks and so forth. So we have a few selected public templates here, but you can actually go back to Party Matrix website and search for our templates. And we actually have so many choices for you to choose from. But something that might be useful, for example, 30, 60, 90-day plan. So if you're a manager, every single quarter, you can choose this template right here to plan out your quarter. And so then you can write out your plan for this month, next month, and the month after. And it's just a very powerful way to organize your work. As you use Party Matrix more, and when you create tasks in Party Matrix, you can turn it into a template. And when you do, you can actually share those templates here on My Templates. And as you can see, for example, I can create an employee onboarding template or a client onboarding template. And when I do that, I can actually just choose the project and I can choose the start date, and Party Matrix will create all those tasks for me and automatically shift all the due dates for me. So it is so useful because, if you have 15 things you have to do for clients over 6 months, right? Especially every client that you do, you have a series of repetitive tasks. Party Matrix will generate all of those tasks for you based on the template. And then lastly, you can do create with AI, where our AI system will come up with the tasks for you, as well as the due dates, and then suggestions of what might be helpful. And then on the right-hand side here, you see something called CSV. Party Matrix actually interacts really, really well with CSV. So you saw how I can export a project as CSV, but also I can import projects from CSV. So I'll show you an example right here. Let's see here. I'm going to find an example here. So here, for example, I have a CSV. And if you create a CSV file with these naming convention, name, due date, start date, owner, and then you save this locally or as a template. When you choose import from CSV, Party Matrix will take this and create a whole matrix for you. In fact, when you export a project, it gives you something like 20 different fields. And so you can customize so many things around your CSV, and then you can import them back into Party Matrix. And so this is a really, really powerful way to manage your workflow. And then also, if you use those effort hours that I mentioned, Party Matrix will export those effort hours out. So then you can sum up the number of hours you've spent on specific tasks or the number of hours different people spend on different tasks. So very, very powerful way. And we let you use Excel to do whatever it is that you need. You can build your pivot tables or whatever it is that you have to do. So that's how you create a project in Party Matrix. Very, very simple. And again, I don't want you to be scared about creating projects. I think you should create as many projects as needed, as long as each of those projects have their own distinct set of priorities. So when we go back to Party Matrix here, I want to show you, when I go look at my list of projects, for me, on my actual work accounts, I have more than 300 projects. So what's nice about that is that I have so many different places to track all my work, but then I actually start leveraging other views in Party Matrix to find the information that I need. But for you, I recommend the following. Create a project for personal priorities, create a project for your weekly team meetings, and then create a project for your goals. So if you do nothing else, create at least those 3 projects. But then if you have other things that you got to do, like your administrative tasks, or if you're a business owner, then you might have different projects for all your different departments, or you might create an AI project on getting a promotion, and the Party Matrix will give you, 15, 20 tasks that you should do in order to get your promotion. And so you can do all of these things directly inside Party Matrix and just create the different projects with all the different types of tasks that you have to do. And so my recommendation is, don't be afraid of creating different projects. Just make sure that you have those 3 projects that I mentioned, which is your team priorities, your personal priorities, and your goals. Now, I said how, if you have a lot of projects, I don't want you to be clicking through the project to find out the work that you have to do, right? So there's something called the home view. So the home view is where you start your day, and you have the first view, which is called the alerts. This tells you all the things that requires your attention. So for example, if you set due dates and you set reminders, it shows up here in the alerts. So for me, I set a lot of reminders and I set a lot of due dates. And so, whenever, even when the due date passes, my recurring reminders will kick in. And so what that allows me to do is I won't forget important tasks even well past the due dates. And so I'll see that here. I can click on the reminders, and then I access the task. And then if I'm done with it, I can just say done, and then I press enter, and now that task is completed, right? And so very, very easy way for me to update the status of things. When people assign you tasks, one of the things they can do is they can click on this bottom here, plus, and they can mention a collaborator. So if you need a team member to know that, this requires their attention, right? So for example, hey, I need you to sign off on something. You simply go mention a collaborator, you select the person, and like that, you press enter. And what this does, it actually creates a special alert inside the alerts view here, and it shows their name. So then it goes to the very, very top to make sure that they know that they need to work on something. So I recommend using that mention a collaborator whenever you need to escalate. Then you can click on what's called agenda, and this will tell you all the things that you should work on this week. And so when you go to the agenda, you actually have a couple of choices here. If you click on the top right, you can choose items that I own. So these are all the items that's assigned to you. So if you're an individual contributor, or you're mostly working on your own tasks, this is the view that you want. This just tells you what you need to work on today, what you work on tomorrow, what are the things that are overdue, and then also tasks that are assigned to you will automatically show up here as long as they have a due date. If you're a manager and you assign a lot of tasks to people, then you're going to be a follower on a lot of those tasks. So then you choose item I follow, and then from here, you can see all your coworkers that have tasks assigned to them that maybe you assign them. And so in that particular case, your agenda gives you a much broader perspective. And then, of course, you can choose all items. And in this case, it will show you all tasks that are due today across all projects that you're part of. So obviously, that's a lot broader. And then also you have what's called My Items, which is sort of a global list of all the things that you have to do. So this is where you pretty much start your day. And so agenda, again, is where you need to go if you need to understand what you need to work on. And then alerts is where things require your attention. Then once in a while, the alerts gets, pretty crowded and, you just need to clear them. You go to the top right to clear the notifications. I mentioned the one-on-one view in Microsoft Teams. You also have the one-on-one view directly from the web app as well. So if you use the desktop app, web app, mobile app, you can go to one-on-one view, select anybody from here, and be able to see all the tasks you have in common with them. Then you have the global calendar view. So instead of just looking at the calendar for one project, when you go to the global calendar view, you see all the tasks across all projects. And then I can go to click on projects here, and I can choose a subset of projects if needed, so that I can see the calendar for all of those. And then not only that, I can click on filters, and then I can actually find out all the tasks assigned to me or all the tasks assigned to each of my direct reports across all of Protomatrix, right? And so this is a powerful way just to see everyone's workload and making sure that no one is overloaded or overwhelmed with tasks on their plate. Then I can also go to what's called the search view. And the search view is a place where it shows all the tasks across all the Protomatrix in a sortable format, which is crazy because you can click on this filter and then you can find anything that you need. So for example, what if you want to know what are all the things that I finish, right? So I finish, and then I can choose between February 1st to today, right? So if I do something like that, Protomatrix will generate a complete list of all the things that I accomplished over this past month. Then I can go back to filters here and I can save this filter as a custom filter. So this allows me to essentially generate information that I need, especially if I have to do a performance report and I need to, upload it into some system that says, hey, these are all the tasks I've accomplished. And you just pretty much create this particular filter, save it as a custom filter. And then from here, you can again select all the tasks that you need and then share it as a CSV or generate an email report. And that I can copy and paste into my Workday system. And then you have the Gantt chart, which is just like the calendar, but again, across much longer term horizon. So I mentioned how, the Gantt chart helps you see things across years. So when I go to this Gantt chart view, the global Gantt chart view, it shows me all the tasks that I have spanning over the next many, many, many months and years and so forth. And then I can export this out as needed. If I'm a project manager, sometimes I just got to put this into a PowerPoint presentation, and you can easily do that using the global view here. Okay, so let me recap on all the things that we talked about. One, I showed you how to create projects, right? And you create these different projects to prioritize your personal tasks, your personal goals. Two, within every single project, right? So within every single project, you have these 4 quadrants and you can create different tasks. And when you select a task, you can add metadata, but most importantly, you set the due dates and the reminders, and then you delegate them if needed. 3, if you go to Outlook, you can turn any emails into tasks. So you install our Outlook extension. If not, then copy your inbox address and save as a contact. So then you can use Protomatrix with Gmail, Calendar, Apple Mail, or any other mail system, or build rules as needed. And then if you use Microsoft Teams, make sure that you install Protomatrix inside Teams on the left-hand side here, so then you can access Protomatrix whenever you need to. And then finally, if you are interested in other add-ins in Protomatrix, you can check out our Chrome extension, Edge extension, as well as our connectors that allow you to integrate with plenty of other apps, and then also Microsoft Power Automate and Microsoft Copilot integrations if you're at an enterprise that supports those things. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump back to my presentation here. So what should you do now? One, sign up for Protomatrix if you haven't already, and then use our apps and Teams and Outlook if applicable. I do think that if you're a Microsoft, if your company uses Microsoft Suite, our integration is almost a no-brainer. And then download the desktop apps. It's actually, I have found that people who download our desktop apps are the most successful. And the reason is simple, is because Party Matrix is there for them every single day, right? And so sometimes when it's a web-based application, you tend to forget, you don't go to it every day, but download the desktop app, make sure that you have it pinned, and then start with you on computer startup, and then create a project for your top priorities. That's the personal priorities that we talked about. And then make sure that you set due dates and reminders. Those are the two features that I think are most important. And then ask your coworkers to do the same, right? Ask them to create their own matrix so then you can compare notes with each other. Then a couple of strategies that I found to be helpful, even for me too, which is to set 1 hour each week dedicated to reviewing your priorities. And I want to emphasize this, which is we don't do this enough. And I speak that for myself. I speak that for so many people that I've worked with, which is we spend so much time doing things, we don't spend enough time thinking about what we should do. And so when you use Party Matrix, spend that time. That 1 hour will pay dividends with respect to prioritizing the work that you have, just to make sure that you have a good sense of perspective and that you're centered around the work that you have to do. And then lastly, when you work with others, just compare notes. Literally showing your Party Matrix to your manager, showing your Party Matrix to your direct reports, showing your Party Matrix to your executives will be so impactful, because if someone asks you to do something and then you're completely overwhelmed because you have 15 things to do and you have a lot of things in the quadrant one, then you simply say, I can take that, but what am I giving up? What will we move from quadrant one to quadrant two, right? What are the things we will deprioritize? And you can't do that unless you use something like Party Matrix to make sure that it's explicit. So I'd strongly emphasize that you do that. So success with Party Matrix should look like the following. One, you're checking Party Matrix every week to remind yourself of your goals. You have one central place to track your priorities. What that means is that everyone's on the same page. You don't have to have a meeting to be aligned. You just open up Party Matrix and go to the team project. And then if you have important emails, you're prioritizing them. You're assigning those emails to people as opposed to forwarding it to people. If you're still forwarding, how things just get messy, especially if you have multiple emails, different threads, people are responding with different things, and suddenly you have no idea where things stand currently. And then lastly, being able to see everyone's priorities in real time asynchronously. So what that means is if you're managing 5 or 10 people, you can go to Per Matrix, you can go to the master view, the search view, you can go to the calendar view, the global view, filter to that person and know exactly what everyone's working on without having to bother them. And I think that's really key. And more so than ever before, we're working across different time zones, we're working across different geographic locations. This kind of capability makes it very easy for you to be on the same page without overwhelming others. Okay, that's all I have for you. As I mentioned, this webinar will be on our website, but also we have deep dive into, specific features and so forth there as well. And then future webinars also will focus on subset of features as needed. If you have any questions right now, please add them to the chat and I'd be happy to look at them. Otherwise, you can also shoot me an email to hi@affluence.com and I'd be happy to answer your questions. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.